Hi, this is Ann Cunningham, co-owner of Sensational Books, creators of the Sensational Blackboard, and author of Sadie Can Count. You're listening to White Canes Connect.
Hey there, PA Federation. Welcome to another episode of White Canes Connect, presented by the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. My name is David Goldstein. I am the treasurer of the Keystone chapter. Joining me today is co-host Stacie Leap, the chair of the Blind Parents Group. Stacie, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you, David? Long time no talk, no hear.
Yes, it has been. And we have quite a show for everyone today, huh?
Yes, definitely. So we have Ann Cunningham from Colorado. She is going to be talking more about her Sensational Blackboard and Sensational book. It's definitely a listen. I have a personal story that everyone has to listen to, and it's really, really moving. So definitely listen to it.
It really is. And it sounded like it was moving both not on just your part, but it sounded like Anne was a little bit as well. I'd never heard of this device, and I know you had talked to me about it in the past, but what a great thing to come up with, and so easy that you can use regular paper and there's nothing special required, just a pen and a paper, which most folks have, whether it's 8.5 by 11 or even smaller. You have something to make a tactile drawing if you're a child. So let's take a listen to the interview. Anne, thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And I'm so excited to have you on this podcast. I wanted to just kind of talk about our personal background together. So I met you at the national convention when it was in Louisiana back in 2022. And there was a workshop on tactile art. And I remember just going in there because, I had my daughter. She was 6 at the time. And I was like, well, I need something for her to do. Everything is just meetings and people talking and business information. And she's a kid. She doesn't need to be all that. So when I saw that tactile art program, I was like, I really have to go. But it was just more so for her. I was like, she's going to color. She's going to do something, whatever it is, But then I met you and you showed me the Sensational Blackboard. And I was like, I didn't understand what was happening with it. You told me that I can just, write on it. It's going to create a raised line drawing. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's something that, other blind kids can do. But then my daughter started using it, which is, David, this is why I love Anne and why she made me cry. So Alana started drawing and she drew a heart. She drew a sun. And then she wrote, Mommy, I love you. And I felt all of that. I felt the way she wrote Mommy, the star, the sun, the heart. And it was just really overwhelming for me. And it just overtook me with a bunch of emotions. And it just made me feel so happy because I never could sense what she was drawing. She'll tell me and I'll just picture it in my head. And it was just that. I would just picture it in my head and I would never realize how she drew or what she drew, the way that she drew it. And just to feel all that was just really overwhelming and really amazing for me as a blind mom. And I don't think you even thought about that as from a blind parenting standpoint, how powerful that could be.
Well, thank you, Stacie, for sharing that with me, because that is like so powerful and so touching. Like you put things out in the world and you never know how it's going to be received, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really nice to hear that helped make such a connection between you and your daughter.
It did. So just to give more background, can you explain more about what that sensory blackboard is?
Sure. So the Sensational Blackboard is a raised line drawing board. So it's very lightweight. It's just a very thin board that's relatively unbreakable. I've never seen one break yet. and I've never seen one wear out yet either. And we've been making them since 2006, right around there. And what you do is you put a piece of copy paper on there's a soft rubbery side to it, and you put a piece of copy paper on there, and then use a regular ballpoint pen and draw firmly so that it wrinkles the paper, and it wrinkles it along the lines that you're drawing so that you can feel it either on the top side of the paper, or you can flip it over and you can feel it on the back side as well. But it's nice because you can feel your drawing as you're drawing it. So you can use your dominant hand to, wield the pen, and then you can watch what you're doing with your non-dominant hand.
Basically, is unlimited uses as far as the drawing, because you're doing it on the paper, you're not feeling the board. Is that right?
That's correct. So the board you can use over and over and over again. In fact, like I say, I've never seen one wear out. But the paper, you can just grab a new piece of paper. There are some other raised line drawing kits out on the market, and they're wonderful, but mine I designed to use with copy paper, because copy paper is so much less expensive than the special papers that go with the other boards. And so you don't have to, special order anything. You can just grab some out of the copy machine and go for it. So, and then it's just a regular ballpoint pen. So you can pick one of those up at your bank or when you go to a hotel, because that's all it is that we're using.
That's what I really appreciate about the board. Like you said, we just grab some paper, grab some pen. I just bring my board with me everywhere. And then whenever she wants to draw, I just ask anybody, does anyone have paper? Does anyone have a pen if I don't have it? And it's just so convenient to do. Like you said, you don't have to use a specialized stylus or specialized paper that costs a whole bunch of money that a lot of people can't afford if they're on a fixed income. So not only is it practical, it's real, and it's also really inexpensive as well, correct?
Well, they're $49.95. So it's not cheap, but it's far less than any of the competition. The other raised line drawing boards that use the plastic paper.
It's interesting as you're talking about this and with the raised lines. I remember when I was in elementary school, I went to the public schools, and I've always had some sight, but when some of the other kids who were blind wanted to color, the teachers would take the Elmer's glue and just trace whatever the drawing was, and then the kids would color that way. They could feel the lines that way. But something like this would make it so much easier. And I'm sure technology now makes everything a lot easier. But I'm just envisioning my classmates back in the day coloring, when we were all coloring together, and the teacher had to make plans a day or two before, because obviously the glue needed to dry. So something like this could also be used like that.
Right. And I would say that's the strength of the Sensational Blackboard, is that it's it's immediate. You can, if you're out on travel and you come to a complicated intersection that you want to describe to somebody, you can draw it instead of, okay, this corner is about 45 degrees angle, stuff like that. It just makes it, you can do that immediately. And if you're drawing pictures, you can, just raise the outline of the coloring book, and kids can go for it, drawing within those lines. The other thing about it, I'm glad that you brought up the coloring book, because I was just at a workshop. I did a workshop for Chancey Fleet at the New York Public Library, the Braille and Talking Book Library back there.
Right.
And we decided to come up with a labeling system for crayons too. And so we did this whole system where you can select the color family that the crayon is in, like the primaries, the blue, red, yellow, and then the secondaries, the yellow, green, purple, or not the yellow, the orange, green, purple, and then indicate if it's a light color or a dark color or a medium color. And it was just really fun, and it made the coloring way more engaging because people had the ability to select the colors that they thought they wanted to make their picture. So that was a fun invention we came up with.
And how did that actually work? How did you do that?
Okay, so we cut out little pieces of paper, strips of paper that are about 3/4 of an inch wide and maybe 2.5 inches long, and put on there at the bottom of the tag. I put an R, a B, or a, one of the first initial of the primary of the secondary colors, so it was, so let's do a red. So I put a red, and it's facing towards you. So it's at the bottom of the tag facing towards you. So it's R there. And then right above that, if it was a light red, I would put 1 dot going across on a horizontal line. If it was a bright red, I would put 2 dots. And if it was sort of like a maroon, or a brick red, something a little darker, we would put 3 dots. So that the dots would tell you if it's in the light, the medium, or the darker hue in that color.
Okay.
Family. And so, and the R would tell you that it's a red. And then we would take the top part of that tag that's been left blank and tape that around the crayon. And that way you could put all your crayons in in a jar, and then you can feel with your finger, just feel through the crayons until you find the color you want.
Oh, that is very interesting. And just to note, you're talking about a Braille R and things
Yes.
like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I am. Yeah. We had an extra thing for the earth colors, and then we had an extra thing for the black or the grayscale. So white to black. White has an X on it.
Okay.
And then no dots, so that's white. And then if it has an X and 5 dots, it's black. And then there are 4 gradients of gray in between those two.
Huh, that is very interesting. And if you put them in a jar, I imagine they're like tags sticking up. Is that what I'm
Exactly
envisioning?
it.
Okay.
Yeah. So you just read from the top down.
Yes.
How when you're reading Braille, you read on your stomach, you just turn it upside down.
That's funny. As far as the Sensational Blackboard goes, is there, I'm guessing it's about the size of a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, or is there a border on it? How is it laid out?
It is just about, it's a little bigger than an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And then we have a mini, which is convenient for putting in your purse or in it's maybe 3 or 4 inches by 5, something like that. So it's smaller. It's a traveling model. And then we also have made drafting boards that we use with Sabre. With the National Federation of the Blind has an engineering quotient program that we did for the last 5 years. It just wrapped up this year, or I guess in 2022. And that was an engineering program for blind high schoolers. And we were teaching drafting in that class, like isometric perspective and orthographic projection. And it was a bigger board that they could draw on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you manufacture these yourself, or do you call up a supplier and say, hey, I need X number of feet of whatever this is, or need the
No.
boards already made?
Yeah, my husband makes them in our garage.
Okay. So it's really
I see
labor
him in the
intensive.
garage looking like a mad scientist, just concocting all the chemicals and stuff.
You brought up the NFB, and for those who don't know, Ann, you were at the Colorado Center for over 20 years. You want to talk a little bit about what you did there?
Oh, sure. Yes, I in the early 2000s. Well, actually, it was right at the end of the 1990s. Must have been in 98. I was given a public art commission for the Colorado School for the Deaf and the Blind. And I was also given an art exhibit for the Museum of Outdoor Arts in Englewood, Colorado. And both of them were meant to explore tactile art that could be accessed through touch. But the director of the Museum of Outdoor Arts wanted me to also add musicians into it. And I said, yeah, why don't we tell a story? We'll have a story, we'll have music and narration added to it, we'll have Braille, we'll have sign language. We had all these different medium in addition to the stone and the bronze and the wood that could be touched. So after I got these commissions, I had to get serious about what I was doing, because I had said that I wanted to do tactile art in the early 90s, and I had a friend who's blind and who is a blind artist, and we were playing around with a lot of stuff. But once I got these major commissions, I had to get serious about it. And so she introduced me to the Colorado Center for the Blind. So that was in 98 that I went there. And what a lifesaver. Julie Deeden welcomed me in, and we just started playing around with stuff. And after a little while, I said, why don't I teach? And she said, sure. And so that was it. I started teaching in 99 and just left last year, a little over a year ago, when we got a new art teacher who is blind. So that was great. So now we have a new art teacher who is just so excited and so dynamic, and I'm really excited to see where he takes the program.
Are there many sighted teachers there?
No, there's hardly any. So
that's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah, I think I was, over the 25 years or 24 years, people would come and go. And there have been other sighted teachers, but I think that right now there might not be any others there.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious about that, because there are some schools that I've been to, primary and secondary, where it's a school for blind kids, but there may not be any blind instructors. And in one particular school, I was amazed at some of the things that they were telling the kids to do or not do. And it kind of goes against the way a blind person would do a certain thing. And I thought, well, I guess you're not blind, so you don't understand it. It doesn't sound right, and I had to correct the person and say that's how they do it. Now I understand. You had a blind friend that got you into it. One day you didn't wake up and say, hey, I want blind people to be able to see art, and started there. It was the friend that got you going. Is that it?
Well, yeah. It was curiosity, like I was doing slate. I was working in slate, and it just felt so good. And it was like, why doesn't everybody touch this, And so it sort of started rolling there. And then I met this friend, and it just, it exploded, and it would change my whole career.
What do you see happening with the company and other products you may come out with? What's happening there?
Okay, well, I feel in a really great situation right now, because I have given up the public art and the teaching, and I am just selfishly taking my time and working at home on producing books for young children. For this year, I sort of have a 5-year plan. And so this year is for the 0 to 1 crowd. And so I'm doing really basic introductory books that would be appropriate for any baby.
Okay.
But the pictures are textually accessible. So our little blind kids will be able to learn along, the same things that the sighted kids are.
The printing on that Braille or typed or both?
Large print and Braille.
Okay.
Yep. So parents who are blind will be able to read with their children who are sighted or blind. It won't matter. The babies won't be reading the Braille yet, but they will be. I always suggest that the parents, even if they're sighted, that they move their hands across the Braille when they're reading to their child, just because their child will still get that motion, that motion that they'll learn from that, that when my mom's moving like this, it means she's reading, I just feel like it's so important that our kids get all the cues that any kid gets.
That was one of my biggest challenges as a blind parent, was to find books that had Braille on it that I could read to Alana, because she could see. So I would always get these books from the hospital when a doctor visits, or whenever I go to WIC and they give out free books, and there's always regular printed books, and she can flip through it and, whatever, chew on it, lick it, whatever she does as a baby, but then I can't read it to her. I would have to wait for somebody to come over, and then I have to either Braille it out or record them reading it, so then I can memorize the book at the time if I didn't know Braille at the time. It was really, really hard. And as I got older, as Alana got older, there was a lot of resources for blind kids to get books for free, but not really a lot for blind parents. And I'm happy that you said that your books are both for blind parents and blind kids. I am willing to be a test subject for these books if you're looking for people.
Great. So, yeah, I just think it's so important that the kids get every opportunity to become literate, at the same time their sighted peers are learning about how to interpret a picture, how to interpret a print word, there's so much that goes into pictures, like even in these basic little books that I'm doing, the kids are learning about horizon lines. They're learning about up and down, left and right. They're learning about different shapes. They're learning about relationships between objects, far and near. And that's, all is beside the point of the whole story, that they're also getting a story with this. So it's engaging, it captures their attention. It's just, it can serve a lot of purposes. And I think that I don't know what kind of effect it'll have on children, because I've never met a person who was raised with textually illustrated books, but I think it's worth trying to, see how much value that contributes to somebody's education.
I would imagine it would be really, really helpful. Thinking about someone in our chapter just had a baby, and she's blind. I don't believe the child is, but just for her to read some of Goodnight Moon, for example, or The Hungry Caterpillar, things like that, thinking about how is she going to do that? Now, obviously, those you read it a couple of times and you've memorized it and you're good to go just by knowing as you turn the pages. But the initial couple of times that you go through it, how do they do that? The child's not going to be reading at this point. They're going to be interested in Stacie, like you said, chewing on the pages. Hopefully it's a board book. that can stand up instead of the page ripping. So something like that to me just sounds like a great idea and something that everyone will be happy for.
Well, I hope so. There was a study that was done in Sweden quite some time ago, but it really stuck with me. The woman was talking about how she was counting the amount of conversation that went on between a child and the parent while they were reading a story. And when she was counting the words between a sighted parent and a sighted child, there was a considerable amount of conversation because the child could comment on the pictures, even though they weren't reading, they could still point out the cat, or, if the cat did something funny, they could point to that in the picture and things like that. There was a lot of back and forth. And she noticed that wasn't happening when a blind child was being read to, because there was nothing for the child to key in on. They couldn't key in on the Braille because that was too advanced for them to understand, and there were no pictures. So she just put in there was a kitten, and it was about a ball of yarn, and the kitten was following the yarn as it rolled through the house, and she just strung this piece of yarn through the book. And she then noticed that the conversation level went up so dramatically, because now all of a sudden the kid had something that they could comment on. Just even because, it was just a strip of yarn, but I could say, oh, this is the yarn that the kitten's running towards the kitchen, and now the kitten's going into the dining room or whatever, whatever the story, wherever the story was taking them, the child could comment, oh, and here we go,
Any plans for any additional types of products like the Sensational Blackboard, or are you concentrating more on the books now?
Concentrating a lot on the books, and when I come up with ideas, I have a new friend who is very good with 3D printing and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so I tell him a lot of my ideas in the hopes that he'll do them. Yeah, I'm finding the books are very, very complex to put together.
Okay.
It's just far more time consuming than I ever imagined it would be.
Where do you plan on providing the books, on Amazon, or where do you plan on selling them?
Well, I'll tell you where the books stand at this point now is I'm figuring out how to create them. I'm writing them and I'm illustrating them in their full color, and they're fully embossed. So I'm doing that sort of on a prototype level, a scale. I do it all within house. I don't print them here. I go to just a Xerox place to print them, but I do the rest of the embossing and everything right here in my studio. And the hope is that at some point, somebody who has the ability to finance this kind of project will get interested in them and decide to fund that project. So in the meantime, I'm making as many books as I can, and we're, displaying them at the National Federation of the Blind convention. This year it's going to be in Houston. So we'll have another table with a little library on it of textually illustrated books, which there are a number of other ones. DK, Doris Kinderling in out of England has some Braille books that are really cool, with tactile illustrations. I've seen The Hungry Caterpillar and Goodnight Moon illustrated textually and by a number of different publishers. And so there are some nice books coming onto the scene.
Yeah, there's a book that I used to read to Alana all the time. It was just called Animal Features, and each page were the different textures of animal. Like, so it had like a fur for the polar bear fur. It had like a kind of like a sandy feel for the armadillo. It had like a scaly feel for the snake. So each page had a different feel to it, like a little corner of the book.
Oh,
So that
nice.
was pretty cool. And
Yeah.
I would always look for tactile books like that to even just read to her. And then that way me and her can both have a conversation about it. And as she gets older, she describes what the animal looks like, and we make our own story. Well, give me a story about the snake. Like, what do you think the snake is doing, or what the snakes eat? Or we try to make a whole different story segue out of the one page.
Oh, nice. That's great. And those books really do add a lot, don't they? Just even a little patch of fur gives you something to talk about.
Yeah.
I had read, Ann, on your website about working with some museums. Could you tell us what you did with them?
Sure. The main museum that I worked with was the Denver Art Museum. And we did a number of bas-reliefs for an exhibit that is in the Western Gallery. And those pieces are still at the Denver Art Museum. If you call up the accessibility coordinator, she'll be able to arrange to have those tactile images available for you. And we went from the bas-reliefs to more of a collage type of technique, which is, so the low relief or bas-relief just means low. That's just like on a coin, how a picture is described on a coin, it's just sculpted in a very low picture.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's, we do, I do a lot of bas-relief, and it's certainly higher than a coin, but it's still relatively low. And then collage, we started focusing on collage, which gives you the ability to glue together different materials, and to indicate, different differences in objects and forms and stuff like that. So it's sort of like the little gluing in the little piece of fuzz in a book, but you can combine it with a lot of different textures to create the picture. And then we started doing more raised line drawing or swell paper. Are you familiar with swell paper?
No.
Okay, that's a type of paper that's fairly automated. So it gives you the ability to take a black and white picture, like a diagram or something, copy it onto the swell paper, and then if you can send it through this little oven that enhances it, what it does is it raises up the black lines, because the heat makes the black line rise, and so you can feel it. So that's another way of getting a fairly quick image that's fairly durable and a little less costly, because it's labor. There's not a lot of labor involved. Some of these things are so labor intensive. It's prohibitive.
So the paper that's used for that, is that something you can get at a lot of places, or is it hard to come by? How do you get that paper? And you basically are just making a photocopy onto that, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Black and white. And you can use color, but that won't rise up. It's just the black lines that rise. And yes, it is very special paper, and you get it from American Thermoform. And you have to have a special machine to send it through.
And that's
So,
where the money comes in, right?
well, the paper is not cheap. It's like I wish I could remember exactly. It's like in the $1 to $2 range for a page,
Okay.
and then the machine is, I think it's down around between 1,000 and 1,500. It used to
Okay.
be considerably more expensive, but now that price is coming down. So that's great. It's the kind of thing that, if you're near a library that has a maker space, a lot of libraries have maker spaces where they have different machines that the public can use, like 3D printers, things like that.
Okay.
This is the kind of machine, the swell paper enhancer is the type of thing that you might be able to talk your library into purchasing,
Okay.
Yeah.
Depending on your negotiating skills, right?
Yeah, maybe. But it's the type of thing that a lot of libraries are now looking at,
Okay.
making themselves valuable to the community in other ways than books, because so many books are getting digitized that they're seeking new ways to keep relevant.
Talking about the digital world, do you do anything online, whether it's display your art? Do you do anything like that?
Well, I've always felt like I am on Instagram,
Okay.
but I don't do much because, my art is tactile. So if you aren't touching it, you really aren't seeing it.
Right.
So there's that. And that's one of the reasons, like this, I started off with working in stone and slate and bronze and wood. And that's all fun, but oh my gosh, if you're taking one story around, like I have a lot of stories, like 7 panels, and it's like a big load in the car, it's an all-day project just to put it up, let alone, make it to begin with. So that's when I started thinking about books. It's like, sure are a whole lot more who can see these pictures if I do it in a book than if I do it in stone.
As you're talking about this, I'm thinking about the Penn Museum, and they are really great with having tactile days to the point where there is this one stone, and you're talking about carrying stones around. I think it would take 4 or 5 guys to carry this thing around because it's probably the height of a person and maybe 18 to 24 inches, in width, and it's just got the hieroglyphics all over it. So I'm just imagining that. And the great thing about the Penn Museum, every so often, blind folks can go in. They have tactile days where you can actually feel the hieroglyphics. You can feel where the guy made a mistake when they were carving the hieroglyphics and used, I guess you would call it prehistoric whiteout to fix it. And then the guy cleaning it back in the 1930s realized, hey, this isn't stone right here, and dug it out.
Oh my God.
So it's just kind of funny how things like that happen. But all of the things there are just so big. I just couldn't even imagine carrying things like that. Obviously, again, you couldn't carry this around, but even just small stones with images or carvings or sculptures, whatever, it would just be so hard you'd get a good workout in, but I'm not sure how feasible it would be.
Exactly. It's just expensive and time consuming. So, I did do a lot of that for a lot of years, and I have a number of works, in public art collections that are permanent. And I'm happy for all that I've done along those lines. But I was happy to also have another way to express myself and to do it in books because it's so much easier to share.
Right. And also something, like I said earlier, that both the blind parent and the blind child, or if it's a sighted child, both can get use out of that is just helpful rather than having to go somewhere and they could have it right on their bookshelf and pick it up whenever they want.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The accessibility is on so many different levels. And just the fact that you don't have to drive somewhere to do it is helpful.
So you say you have an Instagram account. Can you tell us what the Instagram account name is?
Yes, it's at Art A. Cunningham. So it looks like Arta Cunningham. If somebody called me Arta, I wouldn't object. But it's at Art ART A. Cunningham, CUNNINGHAM.
Okay, and I will put a link in the show notes. Is there any other way or any other place you want folks to connect with you other than maybe Instagram?
They're always welcome to write to me, email at Ann@sensationalbooks.com.
And is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to let folks know?
No, this was a delightful conversation. It was really, really nice. We hit a lot of different topics.
I really do appreciate you coming on. And Stacie, it's the connection that you guys have is just amazing. So Ann, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yes. Will you be at this year's national convention?
I sure will be. So
I will look for you. Yes.
Wonderful. I look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks again to Ann for coming on and telling us not only about the Sensational Blackboard, but what she's coming out with next with the Sensational Books. And Stacie, they really sound like a couple of great items. And I know you obviously have firsthand knowledge of the Blackboard.
Yes. And I want to apologize to Ann. I kept calling it sensory. It just kept popping in my head. So I do apologize for that. It's Sensational Blackboard, not Sensory Blackboard. Don't listen to me, you guys, when I said all that. So, but it was just really powerful, and she left such a good impression on me, and it was just really long lasting. And I even use that Sensational Blackboard now with Alana, and we have a lot of fun on road trips and stuff.
Oh, that's great. So you carry it around with you when you go places. So when you go to national convention, you'll have it on you.
I think I'm gonna buy another one when I get there, because she said there's a mini one. I wanna purchase that mini one and see, because that one might be a little small. I can put in my book bag a lot easier.
And that's what I was thinking. Something like that would be great to have along that you can pull out at any time. And as she was saying, talk about if it's a weird intersection, you could kind of lay it out for someone where they could feel how it's set up. So that sounded very interesting to me. So I'm hoping I'm in Houston, and I will definitely connect with Ann if I get down there and you're going. And
yes, I am.
So that should be exciting. And what are you going to do then? Because you do the digest, the monthly digest. So usually have folks get everything to you by the 29th. Are you going to be able to compile everything by the time you travel, or are you going to be doing some while you're in Houston?
I might do some in Houston. I'm debating whether we should even have a July digest, because I feel like a lot of chapters will not have meetings that month of July. So I got to talk to our state affiliate president and see what she thinks about that. Because a lot of chapters and divisions won't have meetings in July,
because they'll take place either during the convention or soon
around
thereafter.
Yeah.
Okay, but in the event that you folks out there who are listening have to talk about an event that you have coming up, all that you have to do is email Stacie at stacie.leap@gmail.com before the 29th of the month to get it in the next month. And Stacie, how many do you think you get each month? How many items do you think you get via email?
Anywhere between 0 and 10.
Oh, so not that many. It's items that you know
many.
about.
Yeah, some of them I knew about already. Like I'll get I'm on a lot of listservs. So I'll just get those, and I just think they're pertinent enough for our affiliate, and I add those on there. But I do get one or two that says, "Hey, can you put this on the digest?" And don't forget, our national convention is coming up in July. It's July 1st to the 6th. Registration should already be over by the time you guys listen to this podcast. But there's other registrations that you guys can sign up for. The National Organization of Parents of Blind Children have their own conference the first 2 to 3 days of the convention. So you can look for the registration link on the nfb.org/convention website for that. There's also a registration for daycare. It's called Day Camp, where children between the ages of 6 weeks to 12 years can go in and have different activities, both for blind kids and for sighted kids. And then there's also the career fair that is happening, I believe, on July 2nd. So that's a separate registration as well. And all of these events and more can be found on nfb.org/convention.
And just to be clear, if you didn't register by the end of May, you can still go and register on site. So that if you say, oh, I really want to go, and you get a great airline deal. Now, the main hotel has been booked. The block of rooms has been booked, but there's still the spillover, the Marriott, and you can go there. And again, you can register on site. It just costs a little more, and obviously will probably cost you a little bit of time waiting in a queue. We'd love to hear whether you're talking about going to national convention or you've got questions, comments, show ideas, what's good, what's bad about the podcast, anything you've got. Please reach out 267-338-4495. You've got up to 3 minutes to leave your name and town. If you do leave a message, we'd love to hear. Please give us a buzz, 267-338-4495.
And if you guys want to send us an email, our email is pretty easy. It is whitecanesconnect@gmail.com. Send us show ideas, questions, comments, concerns, constructive criticism. Positive feedback is much more appreciated than negative one. So please definitely email us.
I have to tell you, I think the motivating thing for me is the negative feedback. It always worked when I was a kid. Stacie, it's been great to have you on for this episode. Thanks for filling in for Lisa.
Oh, thank you for always inviting me.
And thanks everyone for listening. Take care.
Bye.